Good afternoon, members, officers, and ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Manydown Executive Committee meeting. I should first just cover off the fire alarm procedures. That there are no fire alarms scheduled, so if a fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. Second, the first item on the agenda, apologies for absence, there are none. I thank members for bearing with me in my own arrival here this afternoon. Second item is declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations to be made?
No.
None. Thank you. So item 3 is minutes of the last meeting. It should be, in fact, minutes of the Manydown Executive Committee meeting held on the 2nd of December. Which is listed in paper A in the papers. Members, are you content with the minutes as tabled?
Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you, members. That's agreed. I'll sign those following the meeting. Item 4, petitions, there are none. Item 5, urgent items, there are none. So then we move to item 6, Manydown affordable housing motion, which is paper B, and I'd invite Councillor Isaac to introduce this.
Thank you, Chairman. As the Manydown Executive Committee, we are asked to respond to the Council motion passed in December, committing us as landowner to 40% affordable housing on Manydown, irrespective of what form of any partnership arrangement or joint venture may take following negotiations. We've had the subsequent comments of the Manydown Overview Committee, as well as the report and advice given to that committee by officers. I was present, of course, at the Manydown Overview Committee and have given careful thought to the response and recommendations I make today to the Manydown Executive Committee. If I can continue to refer to the Manydown Executive Committee as the MEC, let's shorten things a bit. As a MEC, I think we're entitled to expect reasoned, sensible advice from the MOC, Manydown Overview Committee. We should expect that it would carefully consider officers' advice on important legal and financial issues raised in the Council chamber at the time of the Council motion and confirmed in the most clear, unequivocal terms in the report to the Manydown Overview Committee. Instead, as a MEC, we have received encouragement from a number of councillors, but certainly not all, on that committee, that we should ignore formal written advice from officers, which was supported by reasoned grounds and supported by Council, all seen by the Manydown Overview Committee members. Arguments were offered that this is only an opinion, not a legal judgment. Well, I'm no lawyer, and neither are those councillors, but presented with clear recommendations and warnings by officers and Council, it would be irresponsible of me to decide to ignore it. I'm not impressed by arguments that no 2 or 3 lawyers will ever arrive at similar conclusions. I also respect the advice received from our officer team on this important matter. The minutes of the Manydown Overview Committee record that the majority of committee members, whilst recognising the legal advice, felt that there was enough evidence to support the Council motion at this stage. Are we, as a MEC, expected to rely and act on this comment? The difference is that we, as the MEC, are the executive body, legally charged with the responsibility for making a reasonable, considered decision drawing on the evidence and expert advice provided. It is entirely correct in terms of this borough's own planning policy, policy CN1, in the draft local plan, to test viability before committing to 40% affordable housing. Our own draft planning policy states, and I quote, "In seeking affordable housing provision, the Council will have regard to the current viability of developments, including land values and other development costs. The applicant will be required to submit an open book viability assessment where schemes do not meet the above policy requirements." In such cases, the Council will commission an independent review of the viability study for which the applicant will bear the cost. Such proposals will only be acceptable where the viability case is accepted by the LPA, the local planning authority, and the approach contributes towards creating mixed and balanced communities. End quote. Any reasonable person would agree that for a project of the scale, complexity, duration and importance to the borough and its residents' housing needs, that we should wait until the necessary financial appraisals, further technical studies on infrastructure and work on how the development can be delivered are completed. We are nowhere near having this information ready, and so we should not make premature declarations that in all circumstances it will be 40% affordable housing as far as Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council is concerned. In effect, the motion requires that Manydown be treated differently to any other site for new housing in the borough. Members of the Manydown Overview Committee say, as decision makers, we can ignore clear legal advice. I beg to differ for good reasons, I believe. I'm not prepared to take responsibility as portfolio holder for actions that may cause this council to face legal challenge with all the costs to residents and reputational damage to this council that would entail. Manydown is a 50-50 partnership with Hampshire County Council. Since the judicial review, we have been working extremely well together as partners. The relationship between officers and portfolio holders has been excellent, born out of trust, confidence in the other partner and close liaison. Now we're being required to act unilaterally because 40% affordable must be the right thing to insist upon above all else, including other potential benefits at Manydown, such as community facilities, roads and other infrastructure, schools and environmental and ecological measures. Are these the actions of a good partner? An analogy might be two friends who have embarked on a long car journey together. Along the way, one friend turns to the other and declares, "I want to drive from here on, and by the way, I want us to take the following route, regardless of any different wishes you may have." This would not be conducive to a harmonious, long-lasting trip, I would suggest. At the Manydown Overview Committee, comments were made about how unimaginable it would be for Hampshire County Council or the Manydown Company to do anything but be completely supportive of a unilateral decision by this council to require 40% affordable. I don't wish to speculate about potential issues and legal challenges, but have these councillors learned nothing from the past about Manydown? What if an absolute commitment to 40% affordable by us turned out not to be implementable in accordance with the viability test because of, say, high infrastructure costs or some other reason? Are we seriously suggesting that our partners would calmly accept this situation if it meant that taking Manydown forward would be thwarted by this absolute commitment of one of its partners? How would our residents feel if the viability tests proved 38% or 39% affordable was viable, but because of our absolute policy of 40%, the development couldn't proceed? Or do these councillors want to give a blank cheque now drawn on the Basingstoke and Deane account to pay over to our partners the difference so that our partners at least don't suffer any financial loss from this policy? Our partners will presumably be under a fiduciary duty not to unnecessarily depress the development proceeds they obtain. Where is the financial responsibility to our residents in all this? Certain Manydown Overview Committee members appear to dispense with the need for this borough to make a proper return on its investment in Manydown, so long as a 40% affordable is achieved above all else. What does it matter if the return on our investment is low or negligible? They seem to be saying. Officers and the barrister made it crystal clear that as councillors we do have a fiduciary duty to seek best value. This is not incompatible with 40% affordable, but let's at least wait until the work has been done so that we and the local planning authority can draw conclusions based upon sufficient financial information. It goes beyond this, however. Managed properly and with ongoing public sector involvement, Manydown can be a fund of future income for generations ahead for this borough and its residents, and in so doing very likely deliver 40% affordable. This is a better, more sustainable future than a wholesale rush to require 40% affordable now, whatever the price and damage to partners as advocated by certain members of the Manydown Overview Committee. The prize at Manydown for the borough is huge in terms of providing affordable homes for families and the young and elderly alike. I am perplexed why we are spending time arguing over what is really a shared objective of 40% affordable. I think our residents may think our time would be much better spent getting on with bringing forward a detailed planning application for the first phase of Manydown. I'll finish my conclusions.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Councillor Mrs Baker, would you like to approach the committee and make your comments as chairman of the Manydown Overview Committee?
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and I'd also like to give my thanks to Councillor Isaac for his attendance at the overview and contributions to our discussions, and I don't know whether you've had the opportunity to watch the webcast of the meeting, but if not, I'm sure you've understood from Councillor Isaac that there were very strong views and there was a long and detailed discussion at that meeting. I would say that as one of the councillors who was around and involved in the decision to buy Manydown in the first place, I really can't stress too highly that Manydown was not bought in order to be a cash cow. It was not bought to make profit for the borough. It was bought for the proper planning of the area. And it was all of our ambitions and our partners' ambitions at the time that decision was taken that the development at Manydown should be an exemplary one. And I think for all of the people who were involved at that time, their view of what an exemplary development should be was one that not only included the community facilities, all of the infrastructure, all provided up front in the right time, but also that it should provide its full proportion of affordable housing. And I'd just like you to bear that in mind. I would agree with, I think it was just about the last point that Councillor Isaac made, that there's an awful lot of work to do now, and the important thing is to be doing the master planning and being ready to put the planning application in. I support him totally in that, absolutely right. But I would hope that as an executive that you would feel that part of an exemplary development is not just the return on the investment that it makes, but it is ensuring that it has the affordable housing as well as all of the infrastructure. And that should be what we are all working towards with Manydown. And thank you again for letting me attend your meeting this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Baker. Councillor Isaac, I don't know if there is anything you wanted to respond to on that.
If I may, Chairman, yes. Thank you, Councillor Baker. And first of all, can I say how much I appreciate the work that you do as Chairman of the Manydown Overview Committee. It's not an easy job. But let me just say that I agree with a great deal of what you've just said. I think you know that I'm totally committed to working with Hampshire County Council and the officers and your committee members to produce an exemplary development at Manydown, one that's that includes public leadership, public sector leadership. I have never suggested, and it doesn't even occur to me that it will ever be a cash cow as such. What I am saying, though, is that it makes sense for us to ensure that there are adequate returns so that we can continue to reinvest. And as because this is a very long venture that we're involved in here. You know, this is going to go on for 20, 30 years, and so it's important that we can keep recirculating the money so that we can continue to build this new community at Manydown. And we do have a responsibility not only to look after the interests of those who want to occupy affordable houses, but we also have a responsibility to our residents to make sure that we do continue to get good returns. I think one of the key features of this council is that it manages its money well. And we're not having to borrow, and we are in an enviable position because we manage things well financially. I'm with you. I want to get on with this. I think this is a wretched state of affairs where we're being delayed about this 40% affordable housing issue, which isn't really an issue. It's being put up by certain councillors quite unnecessary, because there's a common view that we should be getting on with this and looking to achieve a delivery of 40% housing if at all possible. 40% affordable housing if at all possible.
Councillor Mrs. Osselton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Baker, for your contribution. I certainly was in the council just before all those words of wisdom were said in the 90s, and then going into 2003 when it really came to the forefront. And also to Councillor Isaac for your comprehensive report. Now, I've read all the papers, I've read council, and I've also read, listened to the webcast. And the one thing that keeps coming back to me is this business that we're not ready yet. Under 3.1.3, planning applications, we've now got consultants on board. We're looking at a detailed master plan and a planning application. And then under 3.1.4, consequently, the Manydown project is not at a stage where it is possible to finalise detailed costing and viability assessment that would be derived from the planning application. I've then looked at council under point 12, where actually it says the fundamental problem in each is that this time officers simply cannot inform the MEC about the effect of adopting the motion. No, because we're not there yet. We have to go further. We have to get the plan into action. That should not be interpreted to mean the council may not ultimately pursue or succeed in delivering a 40% affordable housing contribution at Manydown, but it must do so lawfully. And I think if we've taken legal opinion on this and reading all the information that we've been given, then I feel that the time yet is not right, and we have to take into account what council has said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Osselton. Councillor Isaac, you may wish to respond to what Councillor Mrs. Osselton has just said, and I wonder if I could add my comments as well, in that you have talked about the legal advice and your view that it would be incorrect to only see this as an opinion, and therefore that this executive committee should dispense with it on the basis that the motion would not be found unreasonable by a judge. I just welcome some further explanation on this point, in that why we've obtained this legal advice, and indeed the possible consequences of us not following legal advice. And the second point is around the proper planning of the area, which is often a point made, and quite rightly. Now, to my mind, that isn't the same as saying that it is for the purpose of providing affordable housing and this is what must be done, quote unquote. it is part of a wider package of measures, if I am not mistaken, that includes community facilities, includes affordable housing, but as part of a proper planning of the area in due course when that work is done. Perhaps you could comment on both our points.
Thank you. Yeah. Just to respond to that, as far as the legal issue is concerned, what the motion is seeking to do is make a commitment in all circumstances, and therefore, quite properly, officers provided advice, and they provided that advice initially in the chamber when the motion was debated. And we have had subsequently we've had a barrister's opinion, and I think it's not my position. I'm not a lawyer, as I've said, to second guess the advice that we get from professionals and from experts. I've got a very high regard for the quality of the advice we receive from our officers, and therefore I think it would be foolhardy in the extreme for me as a portfolio holder to recommend to this committee that we effectively ignore it. So I'm not prepared to do that. On the second point, I think that the land was bought for the the proper planning of the area, and it does make reference to housing. It's implicit in that it should be affordable housing as well, in accordance with our own planning policies, but it doesn't actually state explicitly that it should be affordable housing. So any reference to it being used, the money that was achieved when council houses in the past were sold is not correct in relation to affordable housing per se.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. I don't know if there are any other comments that anyone wishes to make, in which case, Councillor Isaac, would you like to sum up and move a recommendation?
Yes. The recommendations are that we consider the comments of the Manydown Overview Committee in respect of the matters contained in that report, and if I could refer to those following the Manydown Overview Committee, the committee has commented that it has a strong ambition to achieve 40% affordable housing on Manydown. That's I would recommend is noted. The second point is that the majority of committee members, whilst recognising the legal advice, felt there was enough evidence to support the council motion at this stage. I think for the reasons I've given, I don't think that would be a prudent thing for us to do. Some members of the committee were concerned about the legal position that the council would be in if it were to commit to 40% of affordable housing at this time. I think that's some correct and wise advice to this committee. The committee encouraged the Manydown Executive Committee members to watch the online webcast of this meeting to understand the feelings and views expressed. That's understood, and I think you were prevented from doing so, weren't you? By your happy event.
Yes, indeed. Councillor Isaac refers to the fact that my wife and I have seen the arrival of our first child, and that's kept both of us very much occupied over the last few days. It's been a rather long time.
I think that's forgivable, actually. And finally, the Manydown Executive Committee should continue to work towards a commitment of 40% affordable housing as soon as the relevant information is available. Again, I don't think that, for the reasons I've given, that I can support that. I can support continuing to work towards a decision for 40% affordable as soon as the relevant information is available, providing it would be viable to do so and would be the proper and appropriate decision to take at that time.
Are we satisfied with the decision notice then as tabled and the points noting as recommended to us by Councillor Isaac? Agreed? Thank you, members. So that is agreed. In which case, we move to agenda item 7, which is the local plan additional delivery on Manydown, paper C in the papers. And again, I'd invite Councillor Isaac to introduce the paper.
This arises from the formal request from the local planning authority to us as joint owners of Manydown to see if we are able to put forward proposals for additional housing to assist in meeting the potential requirements under the proposed local plan for housing through in sufficient numbers through to the end of the plan period in 2029. We need to take account of the views expressed by the Manydown Overview Committee, and these are as following: that the committee supports the proposal to increase the density of the district and neighbourhood areas to around 150 houses spread across 10 years. I support that and would recommend it to this committee. With Plot 6 and 6A, the committee had concerns about the traffic and safety issues at Five Ways Junction and would need to be convinced that it could be managed safely, and also concerns about safety and flooding issues at the railway bridge on Pack Lane. Again, I think those are sound points that officers should take into account. Finally, some members could not support the increase in additional housing without the complete assurance that 40% affordable housing would be applied for. They've had my answer today, and if that gives them sufficient assurance, fine. But otherwise, I can't support this.
Thank you for that introduction, Councillor Isaac. Councillor Mrs Baker, would you like to approach the committee again?
Thank you again, and may I offer my congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's very, very lovely news, and quite excuse you from sitting through the webcast. Can't think of a better excuse. On this second paper, yes, we all know the area well, and members around the table, as Councillor Isaac has just said, are anxious that proper concern is made over Five Ways Junction and Pack Lane and that nasty railway bridge on Pack Lane, which I'm sure, as a good landowner, are things that, yes, we will take proper concern over. I would say at this point that as other landowners, doubtless across the borough, are also looking at their land holdings and seeing what they can do to help the council achieve its now higher housing figure, and would suggest that quite possibly other sites and other proposals will come forward, which also will raise concerns about traffic or what other infrastructure in their areas. I think as Manydown is a very substantial land holding and future development, I think that everything that the council as landowner can do to bring forward development on its own land to cope with the demand for an additional number of houses in the plan period is absolutely the right thing to do, and would simply remind you that when in 2012 the first proposal was put to the council from the Manydown land owner part for a development on Manydown. It was then proposing 4,100, so it was proposing a higher figure than the one that is currently in. So I don't think it's unusual that we are bearing in mind the fact that there are possible traffic problems or other problems with this land holding, but it shouldn't stop us doing what we can to make additional land available for the council in this local plan period. And I trust that that's the way the executive will see it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Baker. Councillor Isaac, I don't know if you'd like to respond to any points made.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baker. Just to make the point, really, that I'm very conscious of the concerns that residents have about the impact of additional housing, particularly on the roads, and therefore any decision to increase the amount of housing on these parts of Manydown are going to be very much dependent upon the outcomes of technical studies that are going to be undertaken. So we're going to look at those very carefully.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. I'm aware, members, that there is, as a result of the supplementary report and section 3 of the supplementary report, there is an amended decision notice which has been circulated to include consideration of Five Ways Junction and the railway bridge on Pack Lane. Members, are there any comments on this revised decision notice? In which case it's been moved by Councillor Isaac and it's agreed by the committee. Yes. Agreed. Thank you very much. That being the case, there's no further business, so I will now get back to my wife and Daisy, and I'll call this meeting to a close. Thank you.